The Center for Education Reform was founded in 1993 to bridge the gap between policy and practice and restore excellence to education. We always believed that education reform was not about ideology, but about a resolve to challenge the status quo. No child should be branded into schools by virtue of their zip code, and CER resolved to change conventional wisdom and provide more choices and accountability for children. Nationwide, the center was committed to promoting educational choice and accountability in every state and in Washington. It's astonishing when you look back now, but choice and accountability were utterly foreign concepts at the time. Virtually no one used those words in the context of education. It speaks to our continued success that those words are now hallmarks of mainstream reform. Our leadership helped launch the school choice movement, and in so doing, we contributed to the enactment of the very first charter school laws, school choice programs, and even lawsuits. In the process, we launched a new generation of reformers who founded new organizations throughout state and local governments. Where once there was the acceptance of the status quo, policymakers and the public now raise questions and challenges. In fact, they run to these issues today because they are mainstream. Slowly but surely, we're seeing more and better opportunities for students and more accountability in our nation's schools. But we have a long way to go, and there's a lot more to do. We are eager to build on that success. Since our founding in 1993, the goal for the Center for Education Reform has been to restore excellence to education by being the leading voice, a megaphone, if you will, for structural, substantive change in education. There are a lot of reform movements and many more organizations that have joined us along the way, and we are thrilled that they are there. However, we're seeking generational change that extends beyond the next political cycle or policy fad, which are so often easily reversed. In order for us to continue to be the standard bearer for authentic education reform, we need the resources to continue to educate and inform lawmakers, people who call us every day for counsel and advice so they can do their work better. Your support will allow us to stimulate the media coverage and issue accuracy so that just like those 5 billion impressions we've had since 1993, we can continue to inform and galvanize the media for our issues. And your help will continue to develop aggressive, sophisticated, and consistent grassroots action among the people who so are sorely needed in this effort for real education reform. The Center for Education Reform is known by its colleagues and the general public as a pioneer and leading advocate for reform. CER is the destination or go-to organization for credible insights into the environment for change, knowledge of local and state players, and strategic advice. Second, our leadership is a force in the media, presenting and transmitting data in the fight for education reform for America's children. Since CER began, we've had over 5 billion impressions in the media. We also excel at developing grassroots voices for reform, people who carry on the work we teach them in their own communities and states. I say this with no hyperbole. The center has been involved every time and everywhere there's been a significant policy debate around school choice and charter schools. We find, empower, and galvanize capable individuals, real people, who raise public awareness on issues and apply pressure on key lawmakers to get the job done. We create and arm bipartisan and multiracial coalitions for reform. And finally, the center is a trusted advisor to policymakers at the state and national level. They know when they contact us, they're going to get the real scoop, and we're going to tell them the truth, no matter how much it hurts. We've influenced hundreds of legislators to write laws that allow real growth of quality choices for the nation's students and their families. The center is known for supporting true reforms, initiative and laws that'll create changes for generations to come. These are permanent educational choices for our children. We have nearly 20 years of data and institutional memory that allow us to differentiate between those that constitute real reform and those that just sound good, but are unlikely to bring lasting change. We're also effective because the data and information we disseminate are trusted as both useful and reliable. Third-party analysis of our media impact found that the Center for Education Reform is a clear authority and influencer on the topics of charter schools, school choice, and public education reform. And our spokespeople were among the most frequently sourced in education reform coverage, even over and above the sitting Secretary of Education. We know how to work at the grassroots level, which is perhaps our favorite and most challenging thing to do every day. The Center for Education Reform cultivates leaders at the state and local level, helping them to secure lasting changes to laws that will forever impact their own kids. We do this by providing local market analysis and access to new partners and allies, people we've gotten to know over the years. We create research and share best practice and tactics so they can be most effective quickly. We cut the learning curve in half for people who are new to the reform movement. We provide them strategic support, teach them media relations, and help them with message development. Our grassroots support and parent empowerment efforts are unparalleled. In fact, what it's all about really is getting policymakers to do what's best for parents and kids, and that's what we at the Center for Education Reform pride ourselves on doing. Policymaker education and grassroots outreach combine to make for effective laws and change. The Center is relentless in tracking progress toward our strategic goals. The first step is engaging in activities that we know will result in demonstrated success. Then we use a unique metrics database to monitor and assess every activity in real time. By way of example, we're currently measuring progress against specific goals in the following areas: increasing positive media coverage, establishing and activating new grassroots groups that are led by parents and local activists in each key state, each with their own specific goals and metrics. These are things like introducing, passing, enacting legislation, even influencing media. We measure our progress in identifying and achieving specific changes in laws in our targeted states, establishing new and stronger complementary voices for reform, encouraging the creation of quality choices among all schools, including charters, online, and other hybrid models, especially in areas with wide achievement gaps. And the Center has set a goal of increased web traffic to demonstrate its effectiveness at reaching new audiences, which is critical if we're going to expand the number of people who appreciate and support real school reform. Those who are familiar with the Center for Education Reform because of our national prominence in the media might have the impression that we're a prototypical Washington think tank. And while affecting the national debate is certainly a focus of our organization, some of the best work we do is actually outside the public eye, in our rigorous grassroots efforts. We've been involved in virtually all of the significant policy debates around school choice and charter schools that have been waged in over the last 2 decades. Another burgeoning area of work for the Center for Education Reform is the digital learning world, cyber charters, blended learning models, all these new fantastic opportunities for learning that are available because of today's technology. I serve as a member of the Digital Learning Council, a group of leaders across the fields of education, business, and philanthropy dedicated to the proliferation of digital learning opportunities. We do a significant amount of policy work in this space as well. The Center for Education Reform's biggest impact to date is that we've put parents and educators in the driver's seat for American education reform. We embraced standards before they were cool and addressed the most unspoken, the most unpopular issues of the day before anyone would concede or dare to say they were issues. Things like teacher tenure, seniority, and teacher quality were not in the vernacular until we started talking about them 1993, 1994, and since. We've challenged the teacher unions and the education establishment to account for their efforts every day. And by so doing, we've made it possible for tens of thousands more to understand and know the fundamental problems in education and to embrace what was once thought of as controversial or even unattainable goals. Through our media efforts, we've demonstrably moved the needle toward more and better favorable education reform coverage. We have metrics demonstrating how our extensive data and commentary actually diminish and neutralize negative coverage. Plus, we've been a key player in all significant education reform battles. That's the impact we're making today for America's kids. While the center is known for consistent quality research and a ubiquitous presence in the media and in the states, we still face challenges. We face significant opposition to our efforts since a variety of entrenched interests are opposed to reform and well-funded. There's also been a proliferation of education reform groups in the nearly 2 decades since the center opened. It's creating a little bit of market confusion, and it's great to have so many groups in what was once a very lonely effort. But many groups do support either very limited or sometimes marginal changes that will have little long-term impact on education reform. We find ourselves often competing against them for scarce resources. Much of the best work we do is intentionally hidden from the public eye, and that's another challenge we face. We haven't done a particularly good job of tooting our own horn about such initiatives, often intentionally because we want the local folks at the local level to take the credit for the important work being done. With additional resources, CER would deploy state-of-the-art media tools to connect the grassroots and school choice organizations more effectively. We'd build even greater public awareness and thus expanded choices for children. More resources would allow us to connect with and connect the grassroots more to a stronger voice for choice and ensure that every option is available, healthy and fortified with innovative, scalable models of schooling. We would expand the media bullpen, which is working to promote accountability and accuracy in media coverage of education reform issues. With more resources, we would build on our recent success and progress through an expansion of our critical ed reform activism program. We would deploy more people on the ground in states to support and coach lawmakers, cultivating citizens into powerful, permanent grassroots levers for change. The work of the Congress and federal agencies in Washington is like a passing parade. Just when you think you've seen all the elephants, a whole new crop of them comes along. Day in and day out, organizations with the best intentions feed into bad policy decisions because they just don't know the players. It undermines the work of state and local leaders, people we work with every day in pursuing school choices, accountability, teacher reform, and more. We have allowed the establishment, well-funded as it is, to monopolize the debate and be more influential than we are on Capitol Hill. And most reformers don't fully realize how the change they seek to put into action might easily become something they didn't expect once those laws they try to influence get regulated and implemented. This is a serious gap that's not being filled by any group with the pedigree and unique understanding of legislation in Washington. The Center for Education Reform could, but is not currently resourced to fill that niche. We could enhance support from Washington for reform while working to protect our gains, and this is an area that is not currently well served by other education reformers.